Good morning, good afternoon, and good night, and welcome to the pod where we chat, argue, and wax poetic about the movies that we love, hate, or that are simply worth talking about. All movies have something to say, and we enjoy trying to analyze what they capture. Welcome to the Chatter After. How's everybody doing out there? This is Brandon Alvarado, the Scarlet Fan here, and I'm excited to come back with another spooky, crazy Halloween recording of the Shatter After, and we are covering tonight Marvel's special presentation, Werewolf by Night. What a great, great addition to the MCU catalog, but also for the month of October. I have my co host, Mike Thomas.
I've talked a lot about how oversaturated the Marvel Universe has become, but if they're going to keep doing stuff like this, I'm here for it.
And special guest from the Last Scare podcast, Blake. What's up, man?
Hey, I think we're all welcoming this change when it comes to the MCU, especially regarding Phase 4, getting some new faces and a play with new genres and tones. So I'm excited to dive into this one of all the MCU projects we get lately.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, guys, welcome to the Shadow After podcast. If you love what we do, you can find us at the Novice Cinephile Network, also on Spotify in podcast format. We have plenty of coverage there. In the month of October, we have a bunch of Halloween recordings: Train to Busan, Moon Knight. We also have Constantine, the 2005 Keanu Reeves film, and this one, Werewolf by Night, which we'll be releasing very soon on our channel. So make sure you stay tuned to you enjoy all the content we're giving you in October. Now, let's jump right into initial thoughts and reactions for Werewolf by Night, this special MCU presentation. Blake, you're the guest. Let us know. You saw Werewolf by Night for the first time. What are your thoughts, initial thoughts about it?
My initial thoughts were that I was pleasantly surprised with how far Marvel really did go with this special, and of course people complain that it's not as bloody as it probably should be or as violent, but you do have to consider Marvel still inching their way towards the more mature content when it comes to their universe. And I think making this special in black and white was their legal loophole into being able to rip arms off, bite ears off, and slash someone's throat with the blood spraying the camera. Just those little instances where the werewolf does get his claws dirty was pretty much everything I wanted from this special. And for 90% of the rest of the special was genuine character building. Like, by the time you get to the werewolf action, you care about Jack Russell and you care about Elsa Bloodstone and why she deserves the Bloodstone more than any of these other guys who were just assholes that weren't really there to contribute much to the story. And of course, I can't ignore the standout Ted. Man Thing was incredible, and I think we can all agree that he deserves his own special post Werewolf by Night. So if I could choose one or two people from this special to come back, I'd probably put Elsa and Man Thing above Werewolf by Night in terms of who I'd want to see so soon again. Which may be surprising or a hot take. I'm not quite sure, but yeah, I think I came out of this special enjoying those two the most. I guess my only complaint was that I want more of the werewolf. I think in his own special he deserved more spotlight. We definitely got a lot of Jack, but I think seeing a little bit more of the werewolf himself would have been cool.
Mike Thomas, initial thoughts, Werewolf by Night.
Yeah. So Werewolf by Night, I didn't know what to expect out of this one because Marvel practically shadow dropped it. Like, we knew it was coming, but it was just like, hey, here it is. Here's the trailer. It's coming out in like 3 weeks. Essentially, is what happened, right?
Which never happens for Marvel stuff,
right?
No.
And so that was fascinating. I didn't have a lot of time to like speculate or have fan theories on it. So just kind of going in blind, I really enjoyed it. I love the slow burn of it too, right? And I agree with what Blake is saying. Like, for it to be called Werewolf by Night, they really held back the werewolf reveal a little bit there, but I think when you finally see it happen, that payoff is well worth it. And yeah, Ted, best character in the entire special. I need more Man Thing. I'm glad Isaac isn't here because he would say something like phrasing right now, but I would love to see
Oh my god.
Man Thing appear again in the MCU. I love the intro though, right? Like, I love how we have the Marvel fanfare, and then you have the claws slashing through it, and then it tells us like, yeah, you guys know the Avengers, but also this is happening, which I thought was just such a slick way of saying, yeah, that you think you know the MCU, but there's still plenty of things that you
Yeah.
aren't aware of, which, going forward, that might be a really cool way to introduce mutants in the future.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I everything you guys said, 100% agree. Um, I personally love Jack Russell because I'm a huge fan of Garcia Bernal. Gael Garcia Bernal. I'm a huge fan of him. Like I first saw him in the Motorcycle Diaries back in a long time ago, which is a phenomenal film about who Che Guevara was before he was Che Guevara, right?
Mm.
Which we know that he worked with Fidel Castro in a lot of insurrections and stuff like that in real life history. That was a great film where he portrayed that character. Um, but I'm a huge fan of Gael Garcia Bernal, and he was great in this special film. I enjoyed all the scenes with him as Jack. I love the play of comedy to it. I love the fact that this is not only an homage to old horror films, but it's also an homage to the horror genre as a whole, especially from that time. It really reeks of Universal Monsters air, but it's also its own thing with its own characters and stuff like that. I love also the take on horror because when you think about that universal take on monsters, it was never about the blood. It was never about the gore. It was all about what you couldn't see. It was all about what you could only imagine how bad things were. And I do like the twists in the story. Like when you see Werewolf by Night, I mean, if you know the books, which I had no clue, I don't know who any of these characters are, which was the biggest plus for me because I came out of it going like, I want to see more. I want to read now. I just purchased the first volume of Werewolf by Night because I want to read it now. Like, which is again, Marvel did the thing. They presented you characters that you know nothing about, and you came out of it going, I love them now. Like, like you come out with that sense, which again is a great win for Marvel. Um, but I like that it encompassed all those elements from that type of filmmaking, but at the same time, and also it tricked us because not only did they do this old style of it, because of the setting and the setting and the set design and all that stuff, it tricked us because it actually takes place in present day, but it
Yeah.
but it is meant to feel like it took place 50 years ago, which is why the Avengers um, introduction in the beginning kind of lets you know, hey guys, this is not something that happened 50 years ago. This is contemporary to the stories that we've heard. It's just a different corner. So I love that introduction and the idea that now we're going into the deepest corners of the Marvel universe to find different things. So I think that was great. Um, and as we start the conversation, let's talk about the first thing, which both of you mentioned. So I think it's a good moment to dish this out. You guys mentioned about Little Time with a Werewolf, which I think was great. And it's a good point, right? It's called Werewolf by Night. You figured you would see more of the werewolf, right?
Yeah.
But I actually liked it because to me, story wise, it was meant to be like you're meant to believe that the werewolf is the monster they're hunting. And then they do the swap
Yeah.
because then you find out no, it's not the werewolf. And even when Man Thing grabs Jack, it looks like a werewolf claw. It doesn't look like you know what I mean. It looks like that kind of werewolf claw that we're used to.
Yeah. It's a
And
good
then
bait
when
and switch.
right, right, it was a good bait and switch that occurs that's why I enjoyed it the most because when we saw the werewolf, I loved how it was still all about what you can see and can't see, right? Like when he's transforming, all you see is the shadows. Like it was all style, and that's what I loved the most about this. Because in most horror films, what people enjoy or what they make front and center of the monster is how much blood and empty bodies do they find. there's not much importance to the suspense that comes. Like there was more fear in Elsa's face when he was transforming than in anywhere, and I love that idea of seeing the fear through someone else's eyes, and then you're seeing, and that take, which again we're going to talk about Giacchino in a minute, but that take of her face scared shitless at what she's seeing, and we're seeing what she's seeing in the shadows and the wall in the back.
Yeah.
That was just, that sense of awe was just great. Now, how did you guys like the bait and switch? The fact that, did you guys know that Gael was the werewolf to begin with? Apart from the fact that the promo shows.
Yeah, that's the problem where filmmaking wise, it's a great move. But the trailer and the poster give it away. Like it at least changed the icon on Disney Plus when you click on it.
The trailer almost didn't give it away because they do lump Jack in with all the monster hunters. Like they never really focus on him, but at the same time they released the trailer, they released the poster, which is him with the werewolf shadow. So I guess if you see that first or you see him at the same time, you, not knowing the comics, would put two and two together like, hey, he's the werewolf. I knew he was cast as Jack Russell, so the whole time just that we've been aware of this special even happening, I'm like, okay, he's Werewolf by Night.
Yeah.
And then watching the special, you do get the sense that he is the main character. Whether he be a monster they're hunting or a fellow monster hunter is kind of unclear. I like the bait and switch. I like that it was Man-Thing, because I think that's the whole point of even not just Werewolf by Night in comics, but Man-Thing and Elsa Bloodstone. All these monster hunting characters also do protect monsters that really are just trying to survive. They're not out to fight good guys or bad guys. They're just kind of lumped in with this Marvel universe. So the fact that the plot was protecting a fellow monster, I loved. And of course, they succeed and they let Man-Thing get away, and then we get our werewolf action, which I so craved for the majority of this. But the bait and switch was clever. I like that they kept it fresh by doing that.
So I'm glad that you mentioned the idea of protecting monsters, right? Which gives another theme onto the story, which is that who are the real monsters? Yeah. Because you have these hunters that live killing these monsters to protect humans, but in reality they're doing it for clout and pride, because they like killing things. And the way they can acquire the greatest power and pride to keep killing monsters for protection is by killing themselves. Which is like that dichotomy of, I like the conversation of who are the real monsters? Are the monsters the real monsters, or the humans the real monsters? Like, where's that line of we're all creatures that should be able to live together in one way, shape, or form, and like it's the whole X-Men thing, right? Like, all those that are cursed with gifts or quirks are bundled up together and have to protect themselves against the world, where humans are just dismissive of anything that's different, as opposed to embracing those differences. So I like the fact. So that actually is another reason why I really liked the presentation of Jack Russell here, because the emphasis is on Jack, the person, and how different he is from all the other hunters.
Yeah.
And every time they talked about, oh, I'm not that kind of hunter, or that kind of conversation, that he doesn't know what it is to just spill blood for the sake of spilling blood.
And that curse is genuinely a burden. He's not a monster. Yeah. I think one of my favorite scenes that whole special was his meeting with the other hunters with the monster heads on the wall, and they're just kind of like, those are trophies to them, and he's looking at them like, oh yeah, that's great. Like, you just cut this creature's head off and put it on the wall. Who knows what he did? You just hunted down this scary-looking thing and killed it.
Yeah,
I like that approach to the story, and that's kind of what drew me in. Not only Jack as a character, but just the world around him and what they were kind of trying to say, what they were going for.
I fought him a couple of times. Like that line was just great.
Yeah,
and you see like that weird Nosferatu-looking vampire.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
What was your favorite do you have a favorite through line or theme, Mike, on the story?
Ooh, honestly, it's exactly what you guys have already been talking about, right? So it's not much I can add to it, but the idea of our like humanity being the monsters themselves, right? And that through line of, like you said, what did all of these monsters actually do? You're just killing them for sport, killing them for trophies, and I think that message, especially when you meet Todd, because by all accounts, yeah, he's scary looking, but he hasn't really done anything. And
Mhm.
then Jack just says, treat him like a friend. And as soon as Elsa does it, they're cool. They're homies. There's nothing else that needs to be done. And so it really brings into that question of like, first off, where do these monsters come from? Because since this is the MCU, I need more details now on this side
Yeah.
of the Marvel universe.
Yeah.
But also, ignoring that entire idea of humanity and these monsters coexisting, I think is the most fascinating aspect of it all.
Mhm.
I like the idea that you came out with a hunger for understanding
Yeah.
of this world, and not that they give you little lore to understand. I like how this world feels lived in, that has existed forever.
Yeah.
Because you know how they can present you a world where you just feel lost because you don't understand what's going on,
Right.
but
Eternals.
but but then we have a world that feels lived in, that even just you knowing the common popular conception of monsters is enough to
Yeah.
be able to enjoy and understand what's happening.
Yeah,
And
and
that's enough to get in the movie.
to answer what you said, Mike, I assume the monster's existence in this world is kind of compared to ours. Like neither of us have seen a monster before. It's just kind of stories and tales and whispers. I assume at this moment in the MCU, that's what it is. Until, of
Yeah.
course, we get someone like Blade,
Yeah.
who probably brings the world of monsters to say the Avengers or Moon Knight, and then it starts to branch out and becomes a more worldwide, like, okay, monsters exist. Just kind of like in 2012, people are like, oh, aliens exist. Okay.
Yeah.
At some point, it drops down into public knowledge, and right now I'm loving that it's just, like you said, a specific corner of the Marvel universe, and you have to be a part of that corner to know monsters exist, and it's a very niche group at the moment.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that you bring that over, because one of the things about vampires, right? Which, going back to the original Blade trilogy, or more importantly, the original Blade with Wesley Snipes, which again, phenomenal movie.
Mhm.
The whole point about vampires is the secrecy behind their power, in terms of social power. So there's no way that you can deny that they've been here forever. We just don't pay attention. So I like the idea that the same goes for the Marvel monster world or monsterverse, where it's always been there, but none of our characters has had the necessity to look into it, and,
Yeah.
and we're just opening just that other door. And it's funny how we all got a sense of satisfaction, like going into space and seeing different races, Thor, different realms, and that's how you know all those other mystical sides of it. But now we're seeing that Earth itself has its own little corner, and it's opening up more and more and more. Because even in films like Doctor Strange, WandaVision, we're seeing different places in different planes, but we haven't explored monsters on Earth,
Yeah.
born on Earth. And I'm glad that this is like the first step into that, and it was great. And I love the fact that it still feels like a Marvel um joint. Does that make
Mm-hmm.
sense?
Yeah.
Like, because they're using humor, and it works within the style, right? Like the whole thing with the bomb and freaking Jack, that was,
Yeah.
I mean, I was cracking up. That was hilarious. The fact that Jack's an idiot, kind of, or
Mm-hmm.
he's kind of like, I like the
It's
idea.
a throwback to bumbling 30s horror movie central
Yeah,
characters where you can't do just a very simple task right the first time. You have to keep
right,
trying until it's obviously
right,
it's the last second.
Some days you
right.
just can't get rid of a bomb.
So,
That's right.
yes, yes. Before we jump to talk about Giacchino, because I know he's going to be a good part of this conversation.
Mm.
Um, am I the only one that's enjoying the smart decision from Marvel, um, where we take a character that we want to bring forth, but we don't armstring it to a type. We modify it enough because we see someone with talent that wants to play it or that's available, and they modify the character to fit that role. And what I mean by that is, I believe Jack Russell is meant to be either European or American, but Gael Garcia Bernal is definitely from South America, and they blend his culture into the role of Jack Russell, similar to what they're doing with Namor in Wakanda Forever, where they blend that actor's culture and heritage into the world of Mayan lore and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I think that's a great move for Marvel, because not only were most of these characters created where in a time where everyone was white, but but also it allows these characters to feel fresh. They don't feel dated, and also feel that they belong in our world as opposed to somewhere far away. So I kind of want to keep seeing this. I like this take. What do you guys think?
I
That
mean,
approach to characters.
it's healthy for characters, like you said. It's exactly where I was going to go with that. These characters were created in the 60s at the earliest, or even the 70s in Werewolf by Night's case, which they are all white. So their character and their kind of their purpose is just very limited. So when you have this special like Werewolf by Night or even Namor, it's okay, how do we take this pretty basic white character and just add so much more to him, not even just to the world around him, but him, and make his world as bright as we can, and then we drop him into this world. And I think it makes, like you said, it makes you want to read this character and like, oh, I like him in this movie. Let's kind of see his history. And I mean, from a character that began in the 60s, you should be expanding upon them today in 2022. There should be so much more to this person in a live action adaptation 50 years after they were created. So it's the smartest thing they can do, and they just consistently bring more to the table with all of these new characters. So I love it.
What about you, Mike?
I mean, I agree with everything you guys have said. I just want to go back a little bit further, right? Because the idea of allowing room to mold the character around the actor and the performance, right? Like we go back to the beginning. We go back to Iron Man, right? Like Robert Downey is not playing comic book Iron Man at all in the MCU.
True. In a good way. In a good way, though.
Yeah,
Yes.
in a great
In the best way.
It's not a knock, but yeah, it's definitely one of those things where you kind of you look at what is the actor's skill set and what can they bring to this performance to make it the best it possibly can be. And I think that's a great thing that they're doing with Namor. I think that's a great thing they did with Jack here. And it's, it's something that I kind of wish they did with Doctor Strange, right? Because Benedict Cumberbatch feels like he's kind of held to making this American doctor where his American accent is kind of a little wonky to me. So it's like, just change Doctor Strange to fit Benedict Cumberbatch. But
he could have been British.
Yeah, like I don't think making Doctor Strange British would have been a weird or a bad call. I digress. I think
you could have made him British, and he just became famous because he came to school in America, and that's where he formed his practice.
Exactly.
So it happens all the time, especially in New York.
You'd think, but in the case of Werewolf by Night and Namor, I love it. I think it's great, especially like Blake was saying. These characters are old. Like, again, some of the most popular ones were made in the 40s and 30s, like Superman, Batman, Captain America. So updating a few of them, you don't have to change all of them, but, making the MCU a more diverse place, I think, is nothing but a good thing.
Yeah. And also acknowledging the talent that's out there.
Yeah.
Like, you're not armstringing yourself to a type. You find out what's best for the story, and I love the openness of Marvel to doing that now. Now, And it's funny because there's certain characters that type of cultural swap or exchange wouldn't work. Like Captain America is one of those. You know, it has to be an American character. Like there's no way, that's very specific for. It goes both for Steve Rogers and Sam Wilson. They both have to be American because that's a very key thing that informs those characters. Going back to DC, for example, like Batman, there's a reason why Batman is Bruce Wayne is a very wealthy white man. Like there's certain things that just become part of the character embedded, but that doesn't mean that there's other characters that have that freedom where you can move things and change them for the sake of the story, for the sake of the characters. And I'm glad that they're giving themselves that space to do it. And I just want to see it more. I want to see more of this. Like we all have seen what happens when you force someone to be an American martial artist when they don't practice when they're supposed to. So that's Finn Jones. Like there's moments where it just doesn't work when you could have like I don't know if you guys know Fat Man Beyond or Fat Man on Batman, Mark Bernard and Kevin Smith.
Yeah.
Like one of the things that Mark Bernard is always saying about Iron Fist, which is one of his favorite characters, is that there's no reason why this character couldn't have been Asian American. There's no reason. Like that would have been something that would make sense. It would sync in with the character. It could have been just great. And I don't know. I'm glad that Marvel is expanding that way.
It's something that Stan Lee has always said, though, right? Like Marvel is supposed to represent the world outside your window, and the world outside your window is not 100% white. So
no,
it's a great reflection, and also again honors what the entire push, at least that's what Stan Lee would always say, of pushing diversity. Like even when they created the X-Men, he even said in a few interviews that he wished he could have done more at the time when he was doing it. But now it's our opportunity, and I'm glad Marvel Studios is taking the chance to say, hey, this is what Marvel was always meant to be. We now have the ability to make that world come to life the way that Stan always wanted.
Yeah. And say what you want about the quality of some of the projects that tackle it, but the Falcon and the Winter Soldier going as far as they did when it comes to who we are in this world individually, it was I think it was handled really well, and I hope it is handled at least just as well in New World Order with all these Hulks running around.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, I don't love that show.
Yeah.
But it made me respect Sam Wilson more. And Bucky Barnes got more development than he's had in the past 5 years.
Yeah.
I want more of that from Marvel, because that's why these comics were even made in the first place. And that's unfortunately why the character of Captain America, whoever is wearing that mantle, hasn't changed that much. Because his war is still being fought today, maybe not literally, but that same ideology kind of exists. And I think that's the sole purpose that Sam Wilson Captain America kind of fits in today. So I'm hoping they're not scared to really tackle those serious topics. And like you said with the X-Men, even Deadpool himself said they're metaphors for racism in the 60s.
Exactly.
It's I don't know. We'll see how far Marvel's willing to go when it comes to why we love these characters in the first place.
If Deadpool can say smart things, Marvel can
now and then.
Marvel can make good decisions. But yeah, this is definitely a step in that right direction, right?
Yeah.
And it also allows us to enjoy it even more. Now, we've talked about a lot of things that we love, but we got to talk about the man that made it happen. So, known in the last 10 years, I would say, if not more, as one of the most prominent music composers known in the last decade, Michael Giacchino, which, by the way, I knew of him because of his Star Trek soundtracks, which are great. Which, by the way, I love that trilogy. But Michael Giacchino is the one that's done the score for the Spider-Man movies. He did the Batman. He's done way too much and so well. he decided to direct a Marvel thing. And what tour de force, guys. So he directed this thing. He brought vision. He brought style. He wrote the music for this thing. Like,
You can tell.
yes, yes. It's like, and again, it's like if he's gonna direct it, he's not gonna want anybody else to, you can tell that he knows how to tell a story in different mediums because again, making the music for a movie is learning how to tell the story in sound, right? But what do you guys think about his first? Is this his first joint as a director?
It
That we
is, and he chose Werewolf by Night. Like Marvel wasn't just like we want to do a Werewolf by Night special. Who could we get to direct it? They're like Mr. Michael Giacchino. Instead of composing this one, who do you want to direct a special for? And he chose Werewolf by Night because he's a huge fan of those the old comics, that old era of horror movies, and it tells when there's that passion behind the scenes. And
yeah.
God, just talking about his music alone, there's passion in the music, which is why every time he ever works on a project, it's phenomenal, and it always fits the character. I mean, he's like you said, he's done Spider-Man and Batman, two very different musical tones. I'm not a big music expert, but
said
two
it right.
entirely different characters. He knows how to bring the atmosphere and the emotion to two different worlds, and I think he brought all of that passion and knowledge to Werewolf by Night when it comes to the very beginning when they're walking into that labyrinth with the drums, I guess you could call it,
with the horn, with
the
big
horn.
Yeah,
Yes, the horn. That might have been my favorite
that was awesome.
part of music from that whole special. It was actually a little unnerving. I like that he was able to bring that to a horror special, no less. And I feel like we're going to get there. So unfortunately, he already said he's not going to do Blade, which I think broke all of our hearts when he first said that. But I want to see more horror from this guy. Some people have said let him do Midnight Suns with all of these horror characters back together again. So
interesting.
Yes, I definitely want to see him helm more projects for Marvel because for his first outing, it was incredible.
Yeah. I like, and I'll pass it on to you, Mike. I love how you mentioned the horn aspect, like just all that. But that whole sequence in the labyrinth, that speaks of the understanding of that old style of horror movie, because it's all sound.
Yeah,
it's all about environment. It's all atmosphere. Because the atmosphere, the music, the sound atmosphere is what keeps you in tension. Because the setting doesn't do anything, but and most horror films are all about atmosphere. That's the point. Creating that sense of, which is why I love 3D audio on PlayStation, because the headphones create that sense of atmosphere and that surround sound around you, right?
Yeah.
Shout out to PlayStation.
This video is not sponsored, but we are open to it, PlayStation.
Yes. Give us a screener for Horizon Zero
they're
Dawn.
like noted.
Yes, yes. But what a great mixture of those two things, right? It's all sound. Mike,
Yes.
Aquino did the thing.
He did the thing, man. I know my name is Michael, but I really want to be like Mike after watching this special because, dude, like, and I want to go back to what you guys have been saying this entire time: atmosphere, tone, and I think him being a composer and working on all of these different movie scores has only helped in his direction too, right? Like he knows how to
100%.
set the mood, how to set the tone for every single scene of this movie. And again, him doing the score is insane. That is just dedication right there, because every aspect, you can just tell it's meticulously designed. And it's a perfect marriage between the score and the film itself in a way that, again, I love all of his scores just about. I think the Batman is the only one where it is this tight, right? As much as Werewolf by Night. And so, yeah, shout out to Michael Giacchino. He did a fantastic job. Heck of a directorial debut. But something that Blake said a minute ago about like him wanting to do this, him claiming this project, I think harkens back to one of my issues with the MCU, and I think a lot of issues people have. It's kind of, again, factory made, right? Like Kevin Feige has his whiteboard of things and checklists that they need to hit. They need to hit these story beats, get these characters, and it's like we didn't necessarily need Werewolf by Night, but somebody had the passion to do it and bring it to life, and you can feel that in a way that some of these other movies or shows you don't necessarily get it. And so if they're gonna start having these special presentations and they're just gonna let folks run wild and grab characters that they really want to tackle, I think that's the best way moving forward with especially the Disney Plus side of the MCU.
Yeah,
they need to start doing more of that. Having a roadmap is amazing, and it's necessary, as we can tell, Star Wars. But having creator and director and writer driven projects, I think, is how we're going to get the best quality, as we can see with Werewolf by Night. And they just did that with Jessica Gao. She just gave an interview and said she originally went to Marvel a while ago and pitched a Black Widow movie that featured She-Hulk. And given the plot that she explained, they were like, you're just kind of pitching a She-Hulk project with Black Widow. And she's like, huh. So they're like, okay, we'll keep you in mind for She-Hulk. And thus, like, we didn't really expect a She-Hulk project when it was announced years ago, which means it was kind of being written years ago. And look how it turned out. It was such a breath of fresh air because it wasn't trying to fit into the MCU. It was trying to be its own thing. And then gradually down the road, we'll see her in Avengers. We'll see her hopefully in Fantastic Four by the time they get going a little bit.
Yes.
But
if Kevin allows.
Yes.
The Kevin.
Exactly. Yeah. The more they let these creators with genuine visions and a passion for these characters and stories, the more we're going to start seeing genuine works of art, which I think nobody will be opposed to, especially if it's such a character that nobody knows anything about. I don't think you lose anything by bringing a C-list character up to the A-list. It's just more of what we love.
That's how the MCU made their name, right? By bringing
Exactly.
Iron Man to the screen.
Exactly right. What do you do without Spider-Man and the X-Men?
Right.
You got to work from the ground up.
Just because you lost your Woody. Oh wait, that came out. Just doesn't mean you don't have other toys in the toy box. You know, you got.
That was a Toy Story. Oh my god!
I tried.
That makes it even worse.
I'm sorry. I said it. I thought it. I should have thought it, then say it. But
it's one of the reasons I loved what DC was doing, right? And we'll see what the future looks like. But just letting Matt Reeves go crazy with Batman, you know, let's do a Birds of Prey movie. Why not? Let's do Black Adam. Sure. And, you know, again, I know you need Superman and Wonder Woman and all of the main characters, but if somebody wants to pitch you a Suicide Squad movie, go for it.
Yeah. I mean, God, we're hearing great things about Blue Beetle just from screenings right now, and as they're still currently working through it. So, I mean, and he's no Superman, but he's a pretty great character.
Yeah. Yeah. I like... the whole thing you mentioned about She-Hulk and Jessica Gao and all that stuff. And I think there's a similar DNA between this one and She-Hulk. And is that She-Hulk doesn't feel like an MCU show. It feels like a She-Hulk show.
Mm-hmm.
Which is, I think, the one thing that the MCU overall has created this box for itself. Where a lot of films don't feel that they belong to the characters, they belong to the universe. So that's what made that She-Hulk show so great. That's what made Moon Knight for me so great. That it felt like this is a Moon Knight show. Yeah. This is, and I think that's one of the things that maybe dragged Falcon and the Winter Soldier for us, as much as I enjoyed the show, because it felt like an extension of the MCU show, right? And it was so linked to that DNA, right? But this felt like Werewolf by Night. It didn't feel like, even though they established the connection to the universe as soon as you see the credits roll, right? In the beginning, but it was a Werewolf by Night show. So I like the idea of bringing that type of identity, especially for these characters that we don't know anything about. And I kind of wonder if that had a lot to do with what's going on with Blade right now. That maybe the script felt like an MCU movie as opposed to a Blade movie.
Hmm.
Hopefully, that's the reason there were differences. Hopefully, that's the reason why Mahershala is pushing to work more on the script. Maybe he has a hand in it. I don't know.
He's another example of walking into Marvel and saying, "I want to play Blade," and they're just like, "We didn't have plans for Blade," and he's like, "That's not what I asked. I said I want to play Blade.
Yes.
I'm gonna play
Yes.
Blade." And I'm
Yes.
glad he's not
Yeah.
settling for a script that he believes is subpar, because I know he's a Blade fan. If he wants to play this character so badly,
Yeah.
he's not gonna let them produce a project that isn't up to what the character
Right.
deserves.
Yeah.
So I trust Blade in his hands, and I really hope this means good things for Blade. I hope they realize they can go more. They can lean into their own corner, as you said, and
Yeah.
I think Marvel specifically kind of forgets that's how the comics work. Like, you have your Punisher comics set in the same universe as Spider-Man, but those tones are as far away from each other as they could
Yes.
possibly be.
Correct.
Doesn't mean they're not in the same universe. They just don't
Correct.
have to lend themselves to the same tone, that same atmosphere, and I think that hurts a lot of projects. If my Spider-Man movie feels like my Punisher movie,
Yeah.
like that just shouldn't be, unless they're crossing over. Then of course you have to play with tones a little bit, and you have to share. But no, when they're in their own little world, just let them be.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because that's actually what makes crossovers so powerful.
Mm-hmm.
And for that's one of the things that make the first Avengers so great, right? Because you can feel how different the characters are.
Mm-hmm.
Like, as the other Avengers movies come on, you feel like this group just belongs together as opposed to just being different.
Yeah.
But like, that's the point. If you're able to establish these very different tones for each character,
Mm-hmm.
the clash of tones, it's part of the narrative. And a good writer will find ways of making that work.
Exactly.
And that's kind of what we want if we're going to cross over and stuff like that.
It's
And
a
that's
feature,
exactly
not
what
a
they did with
hindrance.
Daredevil.
Yeah.
Go ahead. You said it. What was it, Mike?
I was just saying it's a feature, not a hindrance, right? Like,
Right.
Yes.
Batman and Superman being completely opposite tones is the point, and when you bring them together, that's when the magic happens. But what were you saying, Blake? You mentioned Daredevil.
Well, that's just exactly what they did with him. I mean, we've known him as such a dark character for God, how many years that show was on? 5-6 years.
Yeah.
And then he's in She-Hulk. He doesn't feel like a totally different character, but he's in such a lighter tone, especially even with the character that he's acting opposite of. That's just, I think they need to learn from that, because I mean, the majority of fans agreed, like, this is Daredevil, this is peak Daredevil, and it's the guy that we knew from the Netflix show, despite not being in that such a dark place that he was there. But that's what you were talking about, is that's when the magic happens, is when they share the screen with characters opposite to them, and you can kind of see how they either fit together or bounce off each other.
I'm glad that you mentioned the Daredevil appearance, because we get this Daredevil because of what he's been able to overcome in the past.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Like, he's no longer in that dark place where we found him at the beginning of season 3, right?
And that's how that season ended.
Right. He's moving forward. He's embracing who he is, who he can become, and doing his part in Hell's Kitchen, and that just pours over into that universe, which is great.
And I know it's the studio being scared, like, oh, audiences are going to be confused if this Punisher show is dark as hell, and then he'll appear in She-Hulk and it's all light and he's breaking the fourth wall, and you do get that with fans, like, oh, of course this isn't the same Daredevil because that one was dark and gritty and this one's in a yellow costume. So I just think they need to not necessarily ignore things, but do like what they did with Daredevil. Like, I have experience in it. Like, I'm Daredevil. Like, you get this sense that he's like, you don't know who I am. I've been doing this for the past 8 years that I was on some other show. It's just,
and then you have the theme kick in, though, and it's like,
and the theme kick in.
That's
you don't have to be. You don't have to be as so in your face, like, whoa, well, I took down Kingpin. I fought Nobu a couple times. Elektra showed up. Like, just play the theme for a quick second. That's really all you need to know. And for those that want to keep arguing, I guess they're just never going to be convinced. That's their own. Yeah. That's their fault.
Yeah.
Can we admire the use of practical effects in this? Because he had the Marvel Studios. I mean, I'm not saying he had Avengers level money, right?
Mhm.
But
Right, Isaac?
everything, every, everything MCU related, has decent special effects, right?
Yeah.
I mean, anybody can say whatever they want about She-Hulk or other stuff, but at the end of the day, hey, it's expensive to make the Hulk, so
Mhm.
I can't blame them if it's not perfect in every scene. It was perfect when it needed to be. That's the way I see it.
Mhm.
You know, but he could have gone that route, but it would have been outside of style. But I love the fact that all the practical effects that were used in this film don't feel cheesy or quirky. They feel right. Like it
Mhm.
was the right kind of special effects, and like the arm falling off, the cuts. Um,
That's instead of green screen.
yes, there's an actual werewolf person as opposed to, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And I love that it was a nice blend. Like you, when he's doing stuff that is outrageous, you know it's CG, but you don't feel it when it
Yeah.
actually gets in your face.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I like the fact that he didn't know martial arts. Like it felt like a beast just knocking people around. I
Mhm.
like that sense of, especially the whole thing with the blood splatter and stuff like that. Which, by the way, that was one of my favorite scenes.
Mhm.
When it hits the
The
camera.
fight wasn't, yeah,
Yeah.
the mice wasn't that interesting, like because all you saw him is doing weird stuff and just jumping around like he's doing capoeira. But I like the door closing in
Yeah.
and the light and all
Mhm.
that. It was actually pretty great. Um, I think we can start. Do you guys have anything else in particular you guys want to talk about World by Night? Have we covered it all?
I am glad there was one throwaway line in the special that does lend itself back to that little Easter egg from Thor Ragnarok with Man Thing's head on the Grandmaster's little fortress where he said, "I'm done bailing you out of trouble now. You have to do yourself." So we know
That's
he was a
that's
prisoner
awesome.
on Sakaar. He had to fight in that little battle arena, and he was mentioned in Agents of Shield. He was on Shield's radar for a while, so there
Yeah.
should be no question that Man Thing has existed for such a long period of time that he's on all this. He's in Space's radar. He's on Nick Fury's radar. He's a he's always getting himself into trouble in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
And Jack just has to bumble his way into.
Yeah.
I
Now
love
I
the
don't
trying to
think
Chewie
save.
Han dynamic we have between those two.
So great, so
I
great.
love that, and I don't think we can get either of those two back without the other.
Yeah.
If it's a Werewolf by Night sequel, Man Thing's got to be there. If it's a Man Thing special, Jack has to pop up by the end. They're just I love those two.
I don't know why, but I have a feeling that a corner of the internet is going, can we get shorts of Man Thing like the Groot thing?
Oh my god.
Like that would just break the internet.
It would. I would never say no to more Man Thing to whatever extent.
Todd is best boy.
Yes. Yes. So I think the best way to close this pod is if there was a Marvel property, I'm not gonna make it exclusively to Marvel. We've seen Michael Giacchino direct. If he could direct any DC Marvel fair, or if he was able to get something from that toolbox, what character would you like him to bring to light?
That's a good question. I can
And
see
thinking
Blake is
about
thinking, so I'm gonna continue
yeah,
talking.
and thinking about the fact that he'll do the score, he'll do the movie. Um,
I think
what
just
I
for
have one, but
okay.
go,
I think for his
go.
sake, it probably needs to be another special or series because I can't imagine the toll it would take having to score a movie and direct a
Yeah.
movie. So
Yeah.
Yeah,
I,
possibly.
I would limit this to again like a special presentation again like this
Mm-hmm.
one. In the on the Marvel side, I think sticking with this darker side of the universe, like we know he's not doing Blade, but if he wanted to take a crack at Moon Knight, I would welcome him on for season 2 for a
Fair.
couple episodes there.
Nice.
On the DC
Nice.
side, I know we just did our Constantine.
Oh, we're
video.
doing both.
I'm
We're
doing both. On the DC
Okay.
side,
Then
give me
I'll-
Zatanna.
We're gonna cheat.
I'm
We'll
gonna
do
cheat.
Nice.
You
Nice.
just took a Zatanna movie away from me. Give it back.
two.
Fair enough. Nice. Very nice. Very nice.
I'm glad I'm glad you did too, because you stole mine. A Moon Knight special presentation with
Okay.
Giacchino.
Ooh,
In the same vein of Werewolf by Night, where it's really low budget. Like,
yeah.
I love the MCU Moon Knight costume, but just for this little standalone mission that, let's just say, takes place before the show that we got,
Yeah.
and a mask he puts on, a hood he puts up, ties the cape around, like old fashioned Moon Knight. And you have actual sets. He's going up against Black Spectre, kind of a freaky looking Moon Knight villain.
Mm-hmm.
Low-ish budget, like just the fact that it looks like that would be spectacular. And from the DC side,
Or because you mentioned Moon Knight, I don't mean to interrupt you. Maybe we literally bring a different take on the original appearance of Moon Knight against Werewolf by Night.
that would be the genuine crossover that I would love to see from the MCU. And if he
Yeah.
does it too, we know he can handle the werewolf. So
Yes.
I don't I wouldn't doubt his capabilities when it comes to that.
Yeah.
But on the DC side, I'm glad you mentioned Zatanna, because this would also help build to a Justice League Dark. Etrigan the Demon. I would love to see. I know how he can handle monsters, and he can handle the human side of those monsters. If I could see him handle Jason Blood and just a practical looking Etrigan, that'd be incredible. I would need to see the fiery depths of hell from Michael Giacchino for this guy.
Gotta
That
keep the
would be-
rhymes.
He's got to get the rhymes.
I mean, who else, right?
exactly.
And then
yeah.
every time that he's talking in rhymes, there's a special like theme song in the back of
The
it.
score.
Jesus.
Yes.
It's just
Yes.
I gotta call him up now. I gotta make sure this happens. DC needs it.
Giacchino, give it to me. So I'm gonna go with my DC first, and then I'm gonna go with my Marvel.
I love how we just broke the rules and you already had two prepared.
I actually had one, but I'll allow it. No. So for DC, and mainly because it would work in the same tone as Werewolf by Night. Give me Swamp Thing.
yeah.
Giacchino doing Swamp Thing. It's like a man thing that can actually talk,
Is that a cheat?
right? I don't care. It works, damn it. But yeah, but it also has Creature of the Black Lagoon in it. Like it has all of that same kind of aura, and I think it would work. No, we're not doing the Harley Quinn Swamp Thing. That just floats around with Nora, which, by the way, that was
I don't get
hilarious.
hipster Swamp Thing.
I
was
love
that?
the bun. We
Yes.
need hipster swamp
Oh,
thing.
yeah.
It's great.
Yes. But yeah, I think there's a world where we get a black and white Swamp Thing movie by Giacchino. That would be awesome.
That would be
Yeah.
So that would be my DC. Now my Marvel side, and mainly because there's a sense of emotional tragedy to this character, but also I can just see the soundtrack being amazing in terms of a mixture of popular music and score. Give him Ghost Rider.
I'm dying to get Ghost Rider
Like
in the MCU.
and you can do either and I don't know, give him Robbie Reyes Ghost Rider. Like, I mean, either Ghost Rider, but yeah, Robbie Reyes. Like, I enjoy Nicolas Cage's Johnny Blaze enough that I'm okay if we don't go back to Johnny Blaze. But give me Robbie Reyes, right? And have Giacchino do it. And also, like, think about this. The way he handles the camera, especially in angles of action or stuff like that, in that kind of old-fashioned thing, you can make a Robbie Reyes Ghost Rider movie where it has Mad Max Fury Road energy, because Robbie Reyes already has the car. So you can kind of give it that feel, like moving to the desert or something, like, and do it dark and gritty where he's just figuring something out with his family or whatever. But yeah, give him Ghost Rider. I think that would be a very interesting combination. And the score would be very interesting and peculiar.
God, I would need it to be a full-fledged horror. They got to do justice to Ghost Rider.
Yes. And one of the things that I love about Robbie Reyes is The car, man.
That muscle car.
Yeah, bro.
Did you see him in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Brandon?
I enjoyed him quite a bit, yes.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And
that was
also,
great. That's
Gabriel Luna as Ghost Rider was great. And I love the fact that they kind of hint, wink, wink at Nicolas Cage's Johnny Blaze. Like
Hmm.
he's kind of the reason he gets the Ghost Rider powers. So
Hmm.
I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, Johnny Blaze did show up in that show too, which I
Yeah,
loved. The little bullet hole in the skull was a nice touch.
Yep.
yeah, yeah. So, okay, guys, we've done the thing. We've talked Werewolf by Night. We enjoy talking about Giacchino's work of art that he did here. And I don't know, guys. You guys, anything else to give out for Werewolf by Night tonight?
We've gone for almost an hour with this conversation, and we never once really mentioned that this was in black and white, which I think was just a really nice touch.
Hmm.
I yeah, it's built into the old-fashioned movie thing.
Yeah.
There was only one thing, and it wouldn't have ruined the special at all if I didn't get it. But the one thing I wanted to see in this is if something magical or supernatural happened to restore the color, and
Yeah.
Elsa has the bloodstone at the end, sits in that chair, and the color just comes back. I got
That
to
was
see,
so great. That
oh,
was
I got
just
to
so
see
great.
Man Thing green and with the red eyes, and her in her orange jacket, which meant oddly so much to me. That I loved the black and white for the majority of it, so I'm glad we just got color for a little bit. But that was genius how they handled both of that.
They did all the things.
They did
did
all
all
the
the
things.
Oh, and apparently they like getting sushi, which was
They
like,
do.
which is
Yeah.
great.
And I'm pretty sure the werewolf had the green pants when they filmed those werewolf scenes. I wasn't able to tell in the behind the scenes pictures, but apparently he did have the very iconic green pants from the comics. In case anyone was wondering.
I'm glad we didn't have to build up to it like Hulk getting his purple shorts.
Oh God. Yeah, of course he has to earn those purple shorts.
You gotta earn it.
I'm just glad that when we saw She-Hulk, she looked like She-Hulk.
She always looked like She-Hulk. Yes.
Yes.
Love it.
So Blake, thank you for joining us on this awesome
Thank you
episode
for
of
having
Shatter
me. It was
After.
a lot of fun.
Yeah, we look forward to having you back here in the future. And if people want to find you in the webs, what are you up to? Talk to us.
On Twitter, I am at Conquer Comics. I'm a huge fan of King these days. That's the at. But I am on a weekly podcast called The Last Scare, which you can find us on Twitter. I believe we are at Last Scare, and same with YouTube.
Awesome. Mike.
Yes, sir. You guys can find me at Novice Cinephile on YouTube, on Twitter, The Novice Cinephile on Instagram, because someone sniped my name. But you can also find me here at the Chatter After every other week and on the Amateur Otaku, where we're talking anime every single Sunday. It's a fun time, fun anime season, especially Chainsaw Man. I know this is a Halloween episode and we're nearing the end of spooky season, but Chainsaw Man isn't stopping. So make sure you guys check it out because it is
Yes.
a blast.
Can't stop singing that song.
It's a banger.
Yes, and you can find me at the Scarlet Fan 52 on Twitter, and you can find the pod at the Shatter After. You can find our catalog of awesome entries in the Novice Cinephile Network. We've talked about plenty of movies, Good Will Hunting, The Shape of Water. We've talked about Train to Busan. And in this October, I mentioned Train to Busan because we're doing a whole series on Halloween or scary movies. We're covering Train to Busan. We got Moon Knight coming. We have this episode on Werewolf by Night. And we're also doing 2005's Constantine. So we have a lot of great, awesome Halloween content. So make sure you check it out and subscribe to the Novice Cinephile Network so you don't miss any of the takes of the Chatter After. And if you'd rather listen to us on the go, you can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, wherever podcasts are found, you can find the Chatter After. Stay awesome, guys. Keep watching movies. Peace.